The phone screen glowed in Caleb's hand like something powerful waiting to be unleashed. I had brought Ariel's device in for a simple repair. Cracked glass, nothing dramatic. But the way Caleb's face drained of color told me everything had just changed. "Dean," he said, pulling me toward the back of his repair shop. "Cancel your cards, right now. I'm serious. Before we go any further, take a second to subscribe, hit the hype button, and like the video. It really helps the channel grow. And tell us in the comments, what would you do in this situation?" My stomach dropped. Caleb Ortiz wasn't the dramatic type. 40 years between us, built on trust and honest conversation. If he looked scared, I needed to pay attention. He turned the screen toward me. Messages. Dozens of them. Between my wife Jade and her mother Ariel. Once the house is in Jade's name, Dean becomes disposable. I read it again. Then again. The words refused to make sense, like trying to read underwater. More messages followed. Plans, strategies, timelines. Jade describing how she'd been slowly gaining access to my business accounts. Ariel coaching her through every step, drafting divorce templates, calculating asset splits, and buried between the financial scheming, photos of Jade with another man, kissing him, laughing, a gym trainer named Trent, according to the contact name. My hands went numb. 22 years of marriage reduced to a transaction log. Every kind word I'd spoken recently, every attempt to understand why Jade had grown so distant. All of it just theater, while they dismantled my life from the inside. "How long has this been going on?" My voice sounded strange, hollow. "Months. Maybe longer." Caleb set the phone down carefully, like it might explode. "The affair stuff goes back at least 6 months. The financial planning? That's been building for over a year." A year. While I'd been working 16-hour days building my medical equipment business, loading oxygen concentrators and mobility aids into delivery vans, Jade had been systematically preparing to erase me from my own existence. And Ariel, the woman I'd welcomed into my home, fed at my table, tolerated despite every warning sign, had orchestrated the entire operation. I stood there in Caleb's cluttered shop surrounded by broken screens and circuit boards and felt something fundamental shift inside me. The shock gave way to something colder, clearer. "Make copies of everything," I said quietly. "Every message, every photo, every document." Caleb nodded, already moving. "What are you going to do?" I picked up my keys. "Whatever it takes." The drive home felt surreal. Every street looked the same, but meant something different now. My house, the one I'd bought before marrying Jade, the one registered in my name alone, had become enemy territory. The business I'd built from nothing was under siege. My own wife had become a stranger wearing a familiar face. If they want war, they just sent the declaration. Walking through my front door felt less like coming home and more like stepping onto a perfectly arranged stage production. Every detail stood exactly where it always had, familiar to the point of muscle memory. Jade sitting on the couch with her legs tucked underneath her, eyes fixed on her tablet. Ariel moving around the kitchen with her usual deliberate grace, arranging teacups like props in a scene she'd rehearsed for decades. But now that I knew the truth, I could see the performance humming beneath their movements. I noticed the subtle tightness in Jade's jaw when she glanced up, the barely concealed dismissal in her eyes as they skimmed past me. And Ariel, ever poised, ever calculating, watched me with the cool attention of someone assessing a variable in an equation she believed she had already solved. "You're home early," Jade said without lifting her gaze fully from the tablet. It wasn't curiosity. It wasn't warmth. It was a placeholder line in a script she no longer cared to perform convincingly. "Quiet day," I said, placing my jacket over the back of the dining chair, letting my voice remain even. "Thought I'd catch up on paperwork." Ariel floated out of the kitchen, carrying her tea with the practiced elegance of someone who spent her entire adult life trying to look superior and often succeeding. At 68, she had perfected the art of projecting intellectual dominance, the kind built on decades of manipulating conversations, decisions, and, unfortunately for me, family members. "Paperwork," she repeated, lowering herself onto the armchair like royalty settling onto a throne. "Dean, you work too hard. Jade was just telling me how you need to delegate more. Trust people." The irony almost pulled a laugh out of me, but instead, I nodded, playing the part. You might be right. I walked upstairs, feeling their eyes track my steps, two predators watching what they believed was an increasingly weakened target. The moment I closed my office door behind me, I allowed myself exactly 30 seconds of rage. Not noisy, not dramatic, just a silent eruption, hands trembling, breath tight, vision narrowing around the edges. 30 seconds, no more. Then I inhaled deeply and switched gears. Anger was useless unless sharpened into something functional. My computer held everything: financial records, business accounts, legal documents, property valuations. If they'd gained access, the evidence would be there. 40 minutes later, the truth sat on my screen like a confession. Jade had administrator privileges for 3 of my business accounts. She'd downloaded years of statements, including confidential projections. My work email was being forwarded to an address I had never seen. Even my calendar had synced to her devices. Every meeting, every schedule shift, every location. They hadn't just poked around. They had built a map of my life. When I found the folder hidden on the old shared drive we used for household logistics, a cold wave went through me. She probably assumed I hadn't checked it in years. The title froze me in place. Exit Strategy, Dean Maris. Inside was an entire blueprint of my erasure: divorce petitions, attorney notes, asset breakdowns, property appraisals, retirement account projections. There were documents mapping the optimal order for asset seizure. Every file meticulously organized, some stamped as created 18 months ago. 18 months. Ariel's handwriting curved across the margins of printouts. Comments about timing, psychological manipulation, strategic pressure. Notes on how to maximize compliance. Suggestions on how to exploit my work habits. For a moment, I felt my chest tighten. Not fear, recognition. I was witnessing the architecture of betrayal laid out in perfect sequence. I printed everything, saved digital copies on 3 external drives, restored each file to its exact location, wiped any evidence of my review. Then, with the mask firmly back in place, I walked downstairs. Jade glanced up as I entered. "Everything okay?" "Just work stuff. The usual chaos." She nodded, uninterested once she confirmed I wasn't deviating from the version of me she believed she controlled. Across the room, Ariel watched me over the edge of her teacup, her gaze a slow, predatory scan, as if checking for cracks in the trap she was tightening. I gave a small, weary smile. "I think I'll turn in early. Long week ahead." "Of course," Ariel replied smoothly. "You do look exhausted, Dean. Perhaps you're spreading yourself too thin." Translation: perhaps you're weak. Perhaps you're already cornered. Upstairs, I walked slowly, as if weighed down by the life I supposedly couldn't manage. But inside, my thoughts were moving with surgical precision. They had built a cage, but they had forgotten one thing. I was still inside it, and I was still breathing. 3 days passed. I played the role perfectly: exhausted husband, overworked provider, the man who absorbed criticism with dull acceptance. At the warehouse, I pushed through the usual responsibilities. At home, I responded to Jade's sharp comments with forced tiredness and met Ariel's condescending advice with hollow gratitude. Every nod, every sigh, every shrug became part of a counter-performance. Meanwhile, at night, while they slept comfortably believing their plan was nearing completion, I constructed my defense. First priority, safeguard the business. I met with the bank, reporting unusual activity. The fraud team assisted me in restructuring all account access. No transfer could go through without my explicit authorization. I opened new accounts Jade had no way of tracing, then began gradually shifting key funds into secure, isolated locations. Second priority, gather evidence. Installing cameras in my own home required no permission. I placed them discreetly in common spaces, including the living room and near my office door. Within 2 days, I captured more than enough. On one recording, Jade spoke with a confidence that bordered on arrogance. "He's falling apart," she said, pacing. "Give it another month. He'll sign anything just to get peace." Ariel, voice calm as still water, responded, "Exactly. Start with the house title. Once that's done, we move to the business accounts. By the time he realizes what's happening, everything will already be processed. He's slow, darling. He won't connect the timing. Slow. Not cautious, not patient. Slow." Later, as I watched the footage alone in my office, those words stayed with me like a cold draft seeping under a door. My phone buzzed, a message from an unknown number. "We should talk, man to man. Trent." Trent, the man from Ariel's call history, the fitness trainer, Jade's affair partner. So this wasn't only financial dismantling. They were attempting a full personal replacement. I typed one line. "My warehouse, tomorrow, 9 a.m. Let him come. Let them show every angle of their conspiracy." I wasn't just collecting evidence now, I was collecting leverage. That evening, Jade approached me with an air of irritation disguised as concern. "You never spend time with me anymore," she complained. "We barely talk." The hypocrisy nearly made my jaw clench. "We should plan a trip," I said gently. "A weekend away, just us." Her eyes flickered, not with affection, but calculation. "Maybe, after things settle down. Meaning, after I've dismantled your life." From across the room, Ariel gave an approving nod. "It's good you're trying, Dean. Marriage requires effort." The casual weaponization of normal marriage advice would have been impressive if it weren't aimed at me. Later that night, as I lay awake staring at the ceiling, I thought of my son, Evan, oceans away in the UK. 17, sharp-minded, observant. He'd watched Jade change. He'd felt Ariel's influence. The day I put him on the plane, he'd hugged me tighter than usual and whispered, "Watch your back, Dad." He had seen it before I had. Tomorrow morning, Trent would walk into my warehouse imagining he had something to intimidate me with. He didn't know I'd spent 2 decades hauling oxygen tanks, medical beds, diagnostic machines, equipment heavy enough to forge real strength, the kind that doesn't fade with age. Let him step through that door, because once Trent showed himself, the entire board shifted, and every move after that would be mine. Trent arrived exactly on time, stepping out of an expensive car that confirmed what I already suspected. Jade had been funding him with my money. Every inch of him, the watch, the jeans, the swagger, carried the confidence of a man living far beyond his pay grade. He walked into the warehouse like he owned the place, scanning everything with exaggerated interest. 6'2", muscular, an ex-amateur fighter who never made it past local circuits, now earning maybe $30,000 a year training clients who wanted to feel tough for an hour. "Dean Maris," he extended his hand. I didn't take it. "You wanted to talk," I said. "Talk." His smile sharpened. Direct. Good. He leaned against a crate, pretending ease. "Here's the thing. Jade and I have something real. What you two had? Done. You're just slow to accept it." I kept my face blank. The security camera above us caught every frame. "And you thought you needed to tell me this personally because it's easier if you don't fight it," he said, taking a step closer. "Jade says you'll be reasonable once you understand. The house, the business, she deserves half. Honestly, more." "More?" I echoed. "Sure. She puts up with a lot. You're never home. You're boring. You checked out years ago. He gestured lazily at me. She needs someone with energy, someone who appreciates her, not whatever you are. It would have been laughable if it wasn't so predictable. He knew nothing about our marriage, only the story Jade fed him, the dull, inattentive husband. A convenient narrative that erased the years we actually built something together, long before Ariel twisted everything. He didn't know about the early mornings, the shared dreams, or the 1,000 quiet acts that make a real marriage. He knew only the rewritten script Jade used to justify her choices. He took another confident step, lowering his voice. Look, man, don't drag this out. Jade wants a clean split. If you push, everyone loses. I studied him. The performative dominance, the arrogance, the belief that muscles equal leverage. He had no idea the camera above us was capturing every word he'd regret. Are you done? I asked. He smirked. That depends. Are you ready to accept reality? Oh, I accepted reality, I said. Just not the version Jade sold you. Confusion flickered across his face, the first sign the ground had shifted. What's that supposed to mean? I didn't answer. Let him feel the uncertainty. Let him sense the trap he couldn't see. He didn't know it yet, but this meeting wasn't about closure. It was about evidence. Or maybe he did know and simply didn't care. Either way, he'd made a critical error coming here. So you're suggesting I just, what, walk away, hand over everything I've built? Basically. Trent shrugged. You'll be gone from that house in a month anyway. Jade's got lawyers, good ones. Why drag it out? Because it's my house, my business, my life. Was your life. He stepped closer, invading my space deliberately. Now it's hers, and mine. The threat hung in the air between us. He wanted me to escalate, to throw the first move so he could claim self-defense later. Classic amateur mistake, telegraphing intention. I stepped back, hands visible. Get out of my warehouse. Make me. He moved fast. I'd give him that. Probably expected me to be slow, soft from decades behind a desk. But those decades included loading equipment, maneuvering heavy machinery, climbing in and out of delivery trucks. Different kind of strength, but real. I blocked his initial grab, countered with a shoulder check that sent him stumbling. Nothing fancy, just physics and leverage. He came back swinging, wild, aggressive, overcommitted. I stepped inside his reach, got both hands on his jacket, and used his own momentum to drive him toward the door. You're done here, I said quietly. He tried to grapple, but I had position and awareness of every camera angle. When he threw an actual strike, I documented it. Blocked, absorbed, redirected his energy into the wall beside the entrance. He hit hard, gasped, and I let him go. Leave. Now. Trent straightened, breathing hard, and the performance dropped completely. You have no idea who you're dealing with. Jade's already got you buried. This? He gestured between us. This is just entertainment. He walked out laughing, that sound echoing in the empty warehouse. I stood there for 5 minutes after he left, forcing my heart rate down, reviewing the footage mentally. Everything documented, everything legal. He'd trespassed, threatened, initiated physical contact. I had witnesses in the security system. My phone buzzed. Voice message from an unknown number, probably routed through Jade's. Ariel's voice crackled through the speaker. Push him harder. He must break first. Once he loses control, we can use it against him in court. Make him the aggressor. Make him the unstable one. Whatever it takes, Jade. He has to break first. I saved the message, added it to the growing evidence file. Then I called the one person who could help me navigate the legal maze I was about to enter. The lawyer's name was Mitchell Crane, mid-50s, reputation for discretion, specialty in complex asset protection. We met at a coffee shop 40 minutes outside town, somewhere neither Jade nor Ariel would accidentally see us. Tell me everything, Mitchell said, opening his leather notepad. I did. All of it. The affair, the planning, the financial infiltration, Ariel's coaching, Trent's threats. I showed him printouts, played recordings, displayed the security footage. Mitchell watched everything in silence, his expression growing grimmer by the minute. When I finished, he sat back and exhaled slowly. "This is comprehensive," he said carefully. "And it's also very dangerous. These women aren't playing games. They're executing a professional takedown. Can I protect myself? Yes, but it requires aggressive countermeasures." He started listing options: freezing joint accounts, documenting attempted property theft, preparing preemptive filings, legally removing occupants from primary residence if you can prove fraud and conspiracy. "The house is mine," I said. "Purchased before marriage. My name only on the deed." That helped significantly. Mitchell made notes. "But 22 years of marriage complicates things. She'll claim equity through contributions to household and shared life. Did she work during the marriage? Part-time administration at a clinic, maybe $30,000 a year. While you built a business worth 7 figures, maybe more." Mitchell nodded. "She'll argue she enabled that by managing the household. Standard strategy. But with the evidence you have, especially her mother's involvement in planning financial fraud, we can build a defense that protects your assets." He leaned forward. "Here's what I need you to do. Every common area of your house, I want surveillance. Audio and video, completely legal. Every financial transaction, documented. Every conversation with your wife or her mother, recorded if possible. Build an archive." "Already started." "Good. Now the hard part. You have to appear completely normal. Don't change behavior. Don't confront. Don't give any indication you know what's happening. Let them think they're winning. The moment they sense you're aware, they'll accelerate their timeline." I thought about Trent's laughter, Ariel's calculating stares, Jade's casual cruelty. "How long?" 2 weeks, maybe 3. "Get me everything you can. Then we move." We shook hands. As I drove home, my phone lit up with a message from Jade. "Where are you? We need to talk about household expenses." Translation: "I need to justify taking more of your money." I typed back, "On my way. Be there in 20 minutes." The game continued, but now I knew exactly what I was playing for. The next 5 days taught me more about my wife and her mother than 22 years of marriage ever had. With the cameras quietly recording from their hidden angles, I watched them carry out their casual destruction like seasoned performers refining a long-practiced routine. There was no hesitation, no guilt, no second-guessing, just a smooth, unwavering execution of a plan they believed was already unfolding in their favor. Jade would manufacture emotional eruptions over meaningless inconveniences, dishes left in the sink, a towel not folded the way she preferred, me arriving home 10 minutes later than usual. She escalated each trivial annoyance into miniature disasters, creating a narrative of chaos and instability that she could later present as evidence of an unhealthy household. Ariel reinforced the performance, adding polished commentary in a tone that sounded almost clinical. "He seems unable to manage stress," Ariel would say, as if diagnosing a patient. "This deterioration has been gradual, but it's clear now." The cameras caught it all, the faux shock in Jade's voice, the calculated pauses in Ariel's analysis, my deliberately subdued responses. Each interaction became another piece of evidence, another entry in the archive I was building. On the 4th evening, Jade confronted me with a level of indignation that bordered on theatrical. "Our savings account is lower than it should be," she said sharply, holding her tablet like a prosecutor holding a smoking gun. "Where did 10,000 go?" The irony nearly scorched my tongue. "Business expenses," I replied evenly. "Equipment maintenance, the usual." "Without discussing it with me first?" "It's the business account, Jade, not our joint funds." She darted a look toward Ariel, who stepped in with her trademark-controlled disapproval. "Dean, marriage is a partnership. Major financial decisions should be transparent. This secrecy, it's concerning. Secrecy. They used that word confidently, knowing full well they were running a covert operation in my own home. "You're right," I said softly, letting exhaustion bleed into my voice. "I should communicate better. I'm sorry." The apology threw her off balance. She'd braced for resistance. She'd planned for it. My compliance disrupted the rhythm. "I just want us to be transparent with each other," she said, voice softening into something almost gentle. The hypocrisy hit harder than any accusation ever could. But I nodded, playing the role they'd assigned me, and excused myself to my office, where I waited 10 minutes, then resumed securing my financial structure with renewed determination. By day 6, the foundation of my counterattack was solid. I'd already shifted 80% of liquid business assets into newly established protected accounts that required biometric authorization only I possessed. The house deed had been fortified with legal reinforcement proving premarital ownership, meaning Jade had no claim, no angle, no leverage. My accountant, a specialist in fraud prevention, helped me create an impeccable audit trail documenting exactly when Jade accessed my accounts, which files she downloaded, and every unauthorized action she took. Meanwhile, the cameras revealed more than I expected, or wanted to see. Ariel speaking on the phone, presumably to the lawyer she'd been plotting with, discussing timelines, negotiation leverage, and strategies for maximizing Jade's settlement. Jade rifling through my office drawers, photographing documents she didn't understand but assumed were valuable. And Trent sitting in my living room, as if he were the man of the house. Relaxed, comfortable, wearing the casual smugness of someone who believed he'd replaced me. That sight nearly cracked the mask I wore every day. Nearly. But I stayed steady, documented everything, waited. Then came the call from Mitchell on day 8. "I have a colleague in family law reviewing everything," he said, voice low. "She says the evidence of conspiracy to commit financial fraud is clear. The affair provides solid grounds for a fault-based divorce. And involving the mother? Judges notice patterns like that. We can file whenever you're ready." "How fast can this happen?" "If we file with emergency protective orders regarding assets?" "Very fast. Days, not weeks. But Dean, this won't be clean. They will fight." "Good," I said. "Neither will I." That night, Jade approached me with a folder of neatly clipped papers. "I need you to sign this," she said lightly. "Just updating our emergency contacts and beneficiary information." I opened it, scanning each line with the calm of someone reviewing a menu. Buried in the 3rd page, barely noticeable unless you knew what to look for, was a clause transferring power of attorney over the house to her in case of incapacitation or emergency absence. Another clause named her the primary beneficiary on my life insurance and business assets. The audacity, the confidence, the assumption that I would sign without reading. "I'll have my lawyer look at it," I said, closing the folder casually. Her expression tightened. "It's just standard updates." "Then my lawyer should approve it quickly." Her eyes narrowed a fraction, just enough to tell me suspicion had bloomed. Ariel appeared silently in the doorway. "Is there an issue?" "No," I said smoothly. "Just being thorough." They exchanged a glance, a small one, but meaningful. I had disrupted their timeline. The next morning, Jade intercepted me before I could leave. "We need to talk," she said, in that tone she reserved for serious, rehearsed conversations. I sat across from her, waiting. "I feel like we've become distant," she began, shifting into a soft vulnerability she could turn on like a faucet. "Like roommates. Don't you feel it too?" This was the moment, the opening move of their divorce strategy. Set the emotional groundwork, frame it as mutual, position herself as reasonable and balanced. "I know I've been distant," I said. "Work has drained me. Maybe I haven't been the husband you deserve." She exhaled, relieved. Exactly. It's no one's fault. We've just grown apart. And maybe… She hesitated with perfect dramatic timing. Maybe it's time to acknowledge that. You want a divorce? I didn't phrase it as a question. I want us to be happy, she said, reaching for my hand. We can handle this like adults. Split things fairly. No hostility. Behind her, Ariel was listening from the hallway, arms folded, expression sharp, ready to intervene if Jade strayed from the script. Let me think, I said. It's a lot. Of course, Jade said gently. Too gently. Take your time. But the second I drove to the warehouse, everything she'd said churned into a bitter clarity. They didn't want happiness. They wanted extraction. They wanted the business, the house, my life's work, my identity. My phone buzzed. Caleb. Got another backup from that phone. Worse. Call me. I pulled over and dialed him immediately. What did you find? Credit card activity, he said grimly. She's been giving Trent your business cards, thousands in charges, gym equipment, certifications, a trip to Miami, all on your accounts. My hands tightened on the steering wheel. How much? 15, maybe 20,000. Hard to calculate because she spread it across multiple cards. $20,000. Taken behind my back, spent on the man sitting casually in my living room. Caleb, I said, voice steady, I'll need you to testify. I will. These people aren't just dishonest. They're parasites. 10 minutes passed before my breathing steadied enough to call Mitchell. We need to move, I said. Now. What happened? They pushed their timeline forward. I have clear proof of 20,000 in fraud, and Jade initiated the divorce conversation. Mitchell inhaled sharply. All right, we'll file emergency motions tomorrow. But Dean, when this breaks, it has to break clean. One move, one strike. No room for them to spin a counterstory. Can you gather everything in one place? I already knew the answer. Yes, I said. I can. How? A family meeting, here, this weekend. I'll tell them I want to talk about our future. They'll think I'm surrendering. Mitchell let out a low, dark chuckle. That's bold. They wanted war, I said, and I'm going to give them one. I picked up the TV remote. 4 faces watched me, confused by the sudden movement, their expressions tightening almost imperceptibly, like predators sensing the terrain shift beneath their feet. Trent straightened a little in his chair, trying to maintain his relaxed posture, but a flicker of uncertainty betrayed him. Jade's hand curled around her water glass like she needed something to anchor herself. Ariel's fingers tensed on the tablecloth, the smallest tick giving away a mind suddenly calculating new variables. Before we talk about fairness, I said, my voice calm, measured, almost gentle, I think everyone deserves to understand the full picture. Ariel leaned back slightly, masking her discomfort with a thin veneer of authority. Dean, whatever you think you've discovered, you'll see for yourself. I pressed play. The television lit up with footage from the gym parking lot. Jade and Trent wrapped together, kissing with a confidence that suggested they'd long stopped worrying about getting caught. She handed him a credit card with a bright, casual grin, the same smile she used to give me when we first married, before performance replaced sincerity. Jade inhaled sharply. Trent's jaw tightened. Ariel went still as stone. Turn it off, Jade whispered, her voice cracking under the first real weight of exposure. I let the footage run another 5 seconds, then paused it. No, I said softly. We're not done. I advanced to the next clip. Living room audio. Ariel's voice came through crisp and cold. Once the house transfer completes, Dean becomes irrelevant. He's too slow to connect the pieces. By the time he understands, everything will be locked in our favor. Ariel's composure faltered. A single blink, slow, deliberate, betrayed the panic brewing just beneath the surface. The third file appeared. Financial records, neatly highlighted. Unauthorized charges, gym equipment, classes, hotel bookings, Miami. Then the fourth, screen capture of Jade accessing my business accounts at 2:14 a.m. from her tablet. Fifth, scanned divorce paperwork, annotated in Ariel's handwriting, strategies, phrasing to cripple my financial stance, notes for manipulating timelines. The room felt colder with each file. Even the air seemed to recoil from them. "Stop!" Jade said again, louder this time, not commanding, pleading. "Dean, please, this isn't—" "This is exactly what it is," I replied. "Documented, time-stamped, verified." Trent pushed back his chair an inch, fists clenching. "This is manipulation. You're twisting everything." "Sit down." I didn't raise my voice. I didn't have to. "You're on camera threatening me at the warehouse, accepting stolen property, conspiring to siphon money from my business. If you stand up again, Caleb will escort you to the street." As if summoned by name, Caleb appeared in the doorway, silent, immovable, radiating the kind of presence that didn't boast strength but carried it effortlessly. Trent froze like a man who just realized he'd stepped into the wrong bar on the wrong night. Silence settled, thick, crushing. Ariel recovered first, though shakily. "This is illegal. You can't record private conversations without consent. This is my home," I said sharply. "My property, common areas, full legal right. And unlike the two of you, I didn't commit fraud or conspiracy." I placed 3 folders on the table, hard, final. "Jade, yours contains the divorce petition based on infidelity and financial misconduct, emergency asset protection orders, eviction paperwork." Her face crumpled. "Ariel, yours outlines cease and desist orders, removal from all property access, and criminal referral documentation." Her breath hitched. "Trent, yours is a civil suit for participating in fraud and benefiting from stolen business funds." He looked at the folder as if it might explode. The room didn't erupt. It imploded. Jade turned on Trent, voice trembling and furious. "You said he'd never figure it out. You said he was too blind to see anything." "Me?" Trent barked back. "This was your mother's plan. You two dragged me into—" "You took his money," Jade snapped. "You used his cards. You told me to," Trent shouted. "Enough!" The word cut sharply through their unraveling. I stepped closer to the table, letting the full gravity of the moment settle on them. "You built this together," I said quietly. "You orchestrated it. You timed it. You lied. You stole. You cheated. And you underestimated the one person you thought was too tired, too slow, too trusting to fight back." Ariel's hands trembled now. The queen had finally realized the throne was made of paper. Jade, pale and shaking, whispered, "Dean, please, we can talk about this. We can fix this." "There is nothing to fix," I said coldly. "You didn't make a mistake. You made a plan." Ariel straightened her spine in a last, desperate attempt at authority. "This won't hold up. No judge will accept—" "3 lawyers have reviewed everything," I said, "and a 4th is waiting to file. Try me." Her eyes flickered. Not defiance this time, but fear. Real fear. Jade sobbed. Not theatrically, not strategically. Pure, uncontrolled collapse. "Dean, I'm sorry, please." I looked at her without emotion. "You weren't sorry when you used my accounts. You weren't sorry when you kissed him. You weren't sorry when you tried to strip my business and my home. You are sorry now because you lost." Trent rose halfway again. Reflex, not thought. But Caleb stepped forward just enough to remind him of reality. "I wouldn't," Caleb said softly. Trent froze, and for the first time truly understood the position he was in. "Before we discuss fairness," I said, "I think everyone should understand exactly what we're dealing with." I turned on the screen, queued up the first video file. Jade's face appeared, pressed against Trent's, kissing him outside the gym. Date stamp, 3 months ago. Her hand reached into her purse, pulling out a credit card, my credit card, handing it to him with a smile. The room went silent. "Turn that off," Jade whispered. "Not yet." I advanced to the next file, audio recording, Jade and Ariel discussing their timeline. Ariel's voice crystal clear. "Once the house transfer completes, Dean becomes disposable. He's too slow to connect the pieces. By the time he understands what's happening, everything will be locked in our favor." Ariel's face drained of color. I played the third file, financial records showing $20,000 in fraudulent charges. Then the fourth, Jade accessing my business accounts without authorization. Fifth, Ariel's drafted divorce paperwork, designed to leave me with nothing. "Stop," Jade said, louder now. "You have no right." "I have every right, in my house, with my evidence, documenting the systematic fraud you've both been executing for over a year." Trent stood abruptly. "This is manipulation. You're twisting—" "Sit down," my voice cut through his bluster. "You're on camera threatening me at my warehouse, accepting stolen property, participating in conspiracy to commit fraud. Sit down." He looked at Jade, who stared at the screen in horror as more footage played. Her going through my office, photographing documents, texting Ariel updates on my schedule, every moment of betrayal captured in high definition. "You've been spying on us," Ariel finally said, recovering her composure slightly. "That's illegal, invasion of privacy. On my property, in common areas, with full legal right to monitor my own home? No, Ariel, it's not illegal, unlike fraud, unlike conspiracy, unlike theft." I dropped 3 folders on the table. "Jade, that's your packet. Divorce filing based on infidelity and fraud. Asset protection orders. Eviction notice effective immediately. Ariel, yours contains removal from property, cease and desist regarding my business, and criminal referral for attempted financial exploitation. Trent, that's a civil suit for accepting stolen property and participating in fraud." The silence that followed felt like the air before lightning strikes. Then everything exploded at once. Jade turned on Trent. "You said this would work. You said he'd never figure it out." "Me?" Trent stood, backing away from the table. "This was your plan, your mother's plan. I just took $20,000 of my money," I interjected. "Just participated in dismantling my life. Just threatened me in my own warehouse." Ariel recovered first, falling back on her default weapon, intellectual superiority. "This is absurd. You can't possibly think this evidence would hold up in court. Any lawyer could challenge. Already been reviewed by 3 lawyers, all confirming criminal behavior, all ready to testify." I pulled out my phone, showed her Mitchell's contact. "Want to call him? Ask him yourself how solid the case is?" Her hand trembled slightly as she reached for her teacup. The performance was cracking. Jade started crying. Real tears this time, not the calculated performance I'd seen for months. "Dean, please, we can talk about this. It doesn't have to be—" "It already is." I felt nothing looking at her. The woman I'd married was gone, if she'd ever really existed. This crying stranger meant nothing to me now. "Everything you've done, every lie you've told, every dollar you've stolen, it's all documented. You wanted to take my house, my business, my life. Tonight, I take it all back." Trent moved toward me, fists clenched. Caleb appeared in the doorway behind him, bigger, older, radiating the kind of steady, controlled toughness that comes from real-world experience rather than showy gym antics. "I wouldn't," Caleb said quietly. Trent froze. "Everyone needs to leave," I said. "Jade, Ariel, you have 24 hours to remove personal belongings before the locks change. Trent, you leave now, or I call the police for trespassing." "You can't just kick us out." Jade's tears had turned to rage. "I've lived here for 22 years. This is my home. My home, my name, my property. And after what you've done—" I opened the front door, letting in the heavy pre-storm air. "You've got no claim to anything." Ariel stood slowly, gathering her dignity like armor. "This isn't over, Dean. You think you've won? You have no idea what I'm capable of?" Neither did you. I met her eyes directly, letting her see the transformation complete. You taught Jade to take everything. Tonight I return the lesson. She tried to stare me down. Decades of manipulation and control behind those eyes, searching for leverage, finding none. I'd become something she couldn't calculate or predict, a man with nothing left to lose and everything documented. Get out of my house, I said quietly, and take your poison with you. Trent left first, rushing past Caleb with a final glare. Jade stood frozen at the table, looking between me and her mother like she was waiting for someone to fix this, for reality to rewind, for the performance to start working again. It wouldn't. Not anymore. Jade, I said, and she flinched at the coldness in my voice. The woman I married ceased to exist somewhere in the last 2 years. You're just wearing her face. Leave. She stumbled toward the door, sobbing. Ariel followed, drawing herself up for one final attempt at control. You'll regret this. When the lawyers get involved, when the real proceedings begin. They already began. You're already buried. You just don't know it yet. She opened her mouth, closed it. Nothing left to say, no argument left to make. She'd played her best game and lost completely. They walked out into the gathering storm. I watched them reach Ariel's car, watched Jade collapse against the door, watched Ariel's shoulders finally slump in defeat. Then I closed the door, locked it, leaned against the solid wood and felt the weight of 22 years fall away. Caleb appeared beside me. You okay? Better than I've been in months. Outside, rain finally began to fall. Inside, my house was quiet, clean, mine. I'd won.